Well, upcoming celebrations for both President Donald Trump's birthday and America's are taking place at a time where a lot of disagreements are also happening between Trump and other nations and within his own country. Now, for more on this, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini. So, Reggie, let's start with the Iran war, where the already fragile ceasefire there continues to fray even more. And there's a lot of confusion about the peace talks. So can you tell us about the new threats being raised by Trump and where exactly those talks stand?
Right, Miranda. So those new threats that were raised by Donald Trump were walked back almost as soon as they were posted online, where Trump had claimed that late last night there was going to be a hard strike on the country and that the United States may take control of Iran's oil and energy markets. And just a couple of minutes later, it seemed, he walked it back and said that there would be no strikes on Iran because he said that there was a memorandum of understanding or a deal that was set to be signed. And we're still trying to get clarity on what this actually means, but if it's what we've been through in the past, it would suggest that the United States and Iran may be ready to move closer to potentially extending the ceasefire by 60 days, pushing Iran to not have any kind of nuclear weapon, and lifting the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Iranian state media has suggested that there are details still to be ironed out. They're also putting out their own version of what this memorandum includes, which could include billions of dollars being given back to Iran from frozen funds and an unlocking of sanctions that are on the country, which would be a red line for some of the Iran hawks in the United States. So where we stand right now is that the war is technically ongoing. The ceasefire, fragile, is still in place. The question is what happens if and when this memorandum is signed next week, which could happen in Europe, according to the president. There's no clear understanding as to what the mechanisms are for enforcing it or what the consequences would be for violating it.
All right. So the Iran war is top of mind, Reggie, but so are trade talks and the ever-looming deadline to extend the CUSMA trade deal. Trump has stated he doesn't want to renew it. So where does that leave us?
Right, and he has said this privately for the last several months, and the trade rep, Jamieson Greer, has said this publicly for the last several months. And despite the fact that we had Dominic LeBlanc down here last week trying to, sell Canada to the Americans to say, here is what we can do to try and get over some of those trade disagreements that are in place right now. And we had Ontario Premier Doug Ford down here this week trying to pitch his version of why USMCA or CUSMA should be ongoing. It's not clear what Donald Trump ultimately wants here. If the July 1st deadline comes and goes and there is no renewal, it simply means that this would be up for review every single year. It would just throw some uncertainty into Canadian industry, which really has long-term visibility needs. Canadian industries need to be able to deal with manufacturing and distribution. That takes time, and there's a lot of money involved. This could simply be an obstacle to keeping everything rolling along smoothly. We're not clear where things go, and that's because there are no formal talks yet between Canada and the United States, with the U.S. still seeing many trade issues with Canada, including supply management and the fact that booze isn't on the shelves.
Now, also looming, Reggie, is Trump's 80th birthday, and with that, preparations are underway for the celebrations. That includes a UFC octagon on the White House lawn, but there's been pushback to this. What's happening there?
Right. There were a couple of residents of Virginia who filed a lawsuit to suggest that this is a violation of the use of national park property, which does not allow for sporting events to take place. This was supposed to be kind of wrapped up Thursday. It's not quite clear that happened. This court case may still be going on, meaning that it may be frivolous by the time it actually happens because the UFC event will be over. We know that thousands of people are expected on the White House South Lawn. There is some political concern here, given that there's been a bit of pushback and blowback even from within the world of politics in D.C., suggesting that the optics of this may not be in the best interest here. But still, the fact that a lawsuit was brought forward shows that there is kind of still a bit of grievance for how Trump is using the White House and his administration to kind of push things that, yes, may be for America's 250, yes, may be for his birthday, but still fall way out of line with where some of the real issues are for Americans.
All right. Well, Reggie, there's also been pushback and backlash to Trump's recent temporary appointment of the acting director of national intelligence. Can you explain how this is now putting a critical national security tool in jeopardy? And will that change with a new permanent nomination that Trump just announced?
Right. So the permanent nomination, we need to see if what's ultimately going to happen here in terms of trying to get that through the Senate and if they're able to get it through quickly. The temporary nomination, Bill Pulte, I mean, there was swift political pushback here. He is, a key housing person. He is one of the people who was leading the charge against Donald Trump's perceived political enemies, trying to bring mortgage fraud cases, all of which fell apart in court. And having him at the top of the intelligence world, even on a temporary basis, led Democrats to not sign on to what's called FISA. It's foreign intelligence gathering, which allows for the U.S. government to get information, cell phone records for people that are outside of the United States. Sometimes it sweeps up Americans. It's controversial, but it expires today, and Democrats did not support an extension of that because of Bill Pulte being in there. A lot of lawmakers aren't in town this weekend, so it's not clear if that's actually going to be able to get a vote. The question here is going to be, is the Senate going to be able to get the new nominee in place for Donald Trump, for the DNI, in a rapid period of time? If so, things could change here. Ultimately, though, there was, again, pushback here for Donald Trump putting somebody at the top of an agency where people are criticizing that the person may simply not have the qualifications to be in that job.
All right, always a busy time in Washington. Reggie, thank you so much for the roundup and the update to those stories. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini.